Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full IT Welcome to Derry episode 8 finale video. There are a whole bunch of WTF moments and Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. Definitely felt like they were saving some of the best stuff for last. Obviously, a bunch of storylines that they had to wrap up from this arc in the 1960s, as well as setting up future seasons for the 1930s cycle, as well as the 1908 cycle and a potential season 3, so we'll try to address that during the video too. The episode title was Winter Fire, which is a reference to a couple different things, to Ben's love poem to Beverly, Your Hair is Winter Fire, January Embers, My Heart Burns There Too, from the book and from the first IT movie, also to set up the events of the actual episode itself and the way it ended. Pennywise basically fighting the entire town during the episode amidst this giant blizzard that he brings in. Also in the context of the series, Pennywise told Will he would burn too, just like his father, because that is Will's greatest fear. It is also a reference to how Will eventually die at some point in the future before the events of the first IT movie. The episode starts with the whole town watching as Pennywise uses his power to cover the area in a fog and a winter storm so that he can also freeze the lake, for later reasons so that he can actually drive the cart across the lake, even though technically he doesn't actually have to do this because he has powerful telekinesis, so he could just float the cart over if he wanted to, the way he's floating all the dead-lit kids that you see later in the episode. Really, I think they wanted to have the episode with that cool battle that happens on the frozen lake. That was the reason for Pennywise freezing the lake. Freeze it for plot reasons. When you see the mist pollute and kill the local wildlife, this is because the original mist came from his todash dimension, just like it did during the Mist story. The military called it Project Arrowhead during that story, so this is why early on when people saw that the military were going to be burning one of the pillars, people thought it would be connected to Project Arrowhead, but they just kind of left that open-ended. Now you see that because Pennywise doesn't feel like he has to hide anymore, he's showing more overt control over the town. We see one random person smiling with the red balloon nearby just to show how he's in control of everyone. He changes his voice to sound like the principal of the school using the PA system to bring only the younger children to the gym. I'll explain why he only got the younger children in a second, where he can trap and mass deadlight them all and then take them with him when he's leaving the barrier later. The whole reason why he only takes the younger kids, not the older ones too, and not everybody, he could consume anybody that he wants. Why doesn't he just eat the whole town? It's all because he needs the town to repopulate for more babies to be born, for his feeding trough, so to speak. So if he ate everybody right now, there'd be no more food later on. So part of the idea is that he's only taking as many kids as he needs until he gets set up somewhere else outside of Derry. Basically taking his lunch with him on the road. This is also the reason why he deadlights them instead of just eating them all right here, right now. He's saving them for snacks later on. When they go inside the gym, notice the slogan says Trappers, full on Admiral Akbar, it is a trap. We see the turtle walk into the gym too, more Maturin references. There are several during this episode, also implying that the cosmic turtle Maturin might have been helping them out a little bit in the background. There are a couple light references to that, but we don't actually see the turtle himself. It was always a real slim chance maybe the Muschiettis will do actual Cosmic Turtle by the final season. When the Patty Cakes start talking about which pairs of kids would have the ugliest children together, it's a reference to the 1980s losers and which these losers are connected to, which bloodlines they're connected to. There's a lot of this at the end of the episode too, so we obviously know that Will and Ronnie are now going to get together and their son is Mike. They were heavily foreshadowing that in the end of the episode. And now the confirmation that Marge is eventually going to have a child and will name him Richie in honor of Rich.
Your son!
Jury's still out on any of the other 1960s losers wind up being connected to any of the other losers in present day too, but Beverly, for example, is not connected. Pennywise does his act for the kids on the stage. This is a reference to him doing the same thing for Beverly. This time, it's Bill Skarsgard doing his mock version of the principal voice using his dead body like a puppet. And notice how the camera zooms in on the turtle again when he reveals himself. His stage is made to look kind of like his mouth and his throat because it's kind of where the kids are traveling. They will eventually, at a certain point, travel into his mouth as he consumes them later on. Up at the top, you see his catchphrase, time to float, as they are all about to float when he deadlights them. It's what happens when you get deadlit. Does the same little TikTok dance that he did for Beverly. It's the same dance that Bob Gray did, so that's how Pennywise knew to do this both times. Then the song that he makes up for them about dreaming of the little kids is meant to be a reference to his own existence, just like the way he works as a cosmic entity. The lyrics are basically about him spending all of his time hibernating, thinking about eating all the little kids during different parts of the timeline, because he can literally see past, present, and future all simultaneously, so he can't really tell the past from the future. He just sees himself eating all these different kids across the timeline. I know there's going to be a ton of questions about that too, because there are a couple lore clarifications and expansions that they get into with the way he exists outside of time and how he's jumping back into the past now with the 1930 cycle and the 1908 cycle to explain why they're doing the seasons in reverse order, with 1930 cycle being for season 2. Most of the second half of the episode is dedicated to explaining that in a couple different conversations, so we'll unpack that when we get to that part of the episode. Once he deadlights everyone, he reveals that he's bought Bob Gray's original cart to the surface and begins his procession through town to go past the actual tree, past the barrier itself. This is why he's taking the kids with him, because he needs the snack for later on. So he's basically starting this procession, driving the cart past the barrier. This time during the intro, they continue with that discordant, eerie music getting louder by the end of the actual intro, rising to a crescendo, just to show you how things have really hit the fan this time. Also notice the order of the cycles, the way they order this at the end of the intro here, with the Bradley Gang massacre happening, then the 1908 Ironworks explosion cycle happening last. This is to highlight how Season 2 will be mostly set in the 1930 cycle to show you the events of the Bradley Gang, and Season 3, or Chapter 3 as they call it. At the end of the episode they say Chapter 1, so it'll be Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 for Season 2 and Season 3. Season 3, the final season, will be the 1908 cycle. Then they pick up shortly after with the losers learning about the mist covering the town. Pennywise makes them see a bunch of missing posters of all the kids that he just deadlit and the ones that he's already consumed. We get that cool shot of Pennywise playing that sinister sounding song as he travels with the trail of kids, the procession going past the barrier slowly. When Marge says she wants to kill that clown, it's also something that the losers say during the events of the It movies. There are many, many references to the events of the It movies later in the timeline during this episode. They steal the milk truck. You notice that Marge mentions her uncle's name is Mike, more references to Mike in the future losers, even though Marge herself isn't directly connected to Mike. Pennywise messes with Hanlon over the phone, again, the way that he messed with Will. You hear circus music in the background. I also think it was just Pennywise making Will's voice himself. It wasn't actual Will on the other side of the phone, but you hear the circus music playing in the background, basically just messing with him, and it completely works. He says, "What scares the man without fear?" And the answer is Will being in danger. Of course he's scared as hell. Mission accomplished. Pennywise scared the bejesus out of him. Back at the base, Hallorann is about to kill himself, seeing more dead soldiers, hospital workers, other people from across the timeline who have died. Like he said, people tend to go back to the places where they died, so all these different people would have died around the base during various parts of the timeline for various different reasons. Maybe we'll see some of them in the 1930s cycle and in the 1908 cycle in Season 3. Remember when we cameoed as dead bodies in the earlier seasons? Basically, his whole arc in this episode was to eventually get a handle on his shining ability, which is kind of like an open wound, like he can't control it now. By the end of the episode, he learns to control it, and they set up the events of the Shining movie. So we will also unpack all that stuff at the end of the episode, too.
Owns a hotel, wants to give me a shot cooking in a restaurant.
He said it! He said it!
When Hanlon says he'll do everything in his power to help Hallorann if he helps him save Will, this is also to foreshadow what happens at the end of the episode with the way they leave everybody, like all the different places people live, to set up the events of the It movies as well as the Shining movie. They go to Rose's, where his wife is, and start planning how to save the kids with Rose's idea to use Hallorann's Shining to find the cat's paw's dagger to make more Game of Thrones references, the dragon glass dagger. They want to use it to replace the pillar that the military melted down because it's made from the exact same material, so it should function the same way. The only thing about this is they never reference the actual daggers or the barrier itself during the It movies, and I don't expect that to change, but because Andy Muschietti said he's doing an It supercut combining both movies with some deleted scenes from the movies that he shot that nobody has seen before, maybe there'll be some sly wink that he'll work into that there. Rose then gives Hallorann a big boost to his shining ability with something called Maturin Root, named for the actual cosmic turtle. The series implies that he just has special properties that boost his shining abilities, helps focus them. But if it wasn't clear, she herself does not have the shining ability the same way. When her warning to him starts playing in reverse, she was trying to tell him not to go down into the cistern where Pennywise's lair is, which is to foreshadow him messing with Pennywise's mind, later using his shining ability that had been boosted by the actual Maturin root. Is the whole reason why later in the episode he can stop Pennywise dead in his tracks and start messing with his mind the way that Pennywise had been messing with Hallorann's mind earlier in the season. It's meant to be a big reversal of that. Then there's this really cool transition where we actually see Hallorann perceiving the dagger. The mouth here is also a reference to Pennywise's mouth in the Deadlights. Rose then gives a Lord of the Rings style explainer about the dagger and what it's doing to Lily, and it really does feel like a Lord of the Rings One Ring of Power effect, where the dagger fragment has a consciousness of its own and wants to return to the rest of the meteorite down in the cistern, and the further away you get from it, that someone takes it, the more insane it drives them, explaining why Lily has gone full Gollum, my precious. We go back to the kids. The reason why the dagger starts glowing this way is because Pennywise is physically near, even though technically he's omnipresent in Derry, like he basically is the town itself. Later during the events of the books, when the losers eventually do perma-kill him, it actually winds up causing a giant portion of the town to collapse just because they kill his body. Then there's another big Stephen King Easter egg. When Pennywise opens the door to his cart and the blood pours down the steps, that's a very clear Shining reference with the blood coming out of the elevator. And basically the rest of this final battle of the season takes place on the frozen river here, and him trying to pick off the different kids one at a time, and then eventually the military and the adults as well too. We start to get a bunch of Pennywise cosmic entity timeline explainers, like Pennywise does a lot of deep lore explaining here to Marge specifically. He names her Tozier, saying that she will eventually get married, will eventually give birth to Richie, and name him Richie in honor of Rich. So this will also throw you for a loop too. Is this a bootstrap paradox? Does she get the idea to name her son Richie after Pennywise told her to do that? When he shows her literally a picture of Richie from the first It movie, it's the same exact poster that Pennywise shows to young Richie inside the well house during the It movie. Then he explains that because he exists outside of space and time, he's an energy being from another dimension that exists outside of space and time. He can see the past, present, and future all simultaneously.
Tomorrow, yesterday, it's all the same for little Pennywise.
Therefore, he also knows and has seen the future 1980s losers eventually kill him and wants to kill Marge now in the past to try and avoid that fate. And as they explain later in the episode, he's going to do the same thing back in the 1930s and then again in the 1908 timeline through future seasons. This is what he means when he says that it's his death or his birth. Basically, he's going to jump back into his body in the past, like his consciousness will just travel back into the past in the 1930s, and he'll try and change events so that he avoids the fate that he falls to in the 1960s here with the dagger. So this is all to explain why the Muschiettis decided to do the seasons in reverse order instead of doing in chronological order with like 1908 first, then 1930, then the 1960s cycle. You can let me know if you think that's a clever twist, like, ooh, that's an interesting spin on the way that Pennywise exists outside of space and time and sees the entire timeline simultaneously. He can literally just go back into the past and mess with stuff in the past anytime he wants. This is also why sometimes it takes him a little while to remember things like, oh, I remember you from 1908, like when he meets Shaw again, I never forget a smell, all because he can't tell the difference between the past, present, and future. It's all the same to him. Marge is then saved when Pennywise is stopped dead in his tracks because of Hallorann's focus shining ability going into his mind and then messing with him. That's why he's inside the cart here seeing all these things, because Hallorann is tripping out on that Maturin route. We get another turtle reference when they go back to the deadlit kids that are also freed when Pennywise gets stopped dead in his tracks, where they show the turtle standing up, like, up, another turtle. Unfortunately, all the patty cakes survive. Basically, all the kids here survive. That's what they're trying to show you. When Hanlon and Taniel try to take the dagger to the Deadwood tree, it's a bit like Frodo and Sam taking the One Ring of Power to Mount Doom. In The Lord of the Rings, the One Ring of Power also tried to stop them from getting rid of it in the fires, the same way the dagger tries to stop the kids dead in its tracks. Shaw and the military show up to try and stop them from stopping Pennywise because they want him to get free, which is a terrible idea. We knew exactly how this was going to end. It was one of the most predictable storylines this entire season. Eventually, Shaw will wind up getting his comeuppance from Pennywise, who will consume him in some ironic way, which is basically what goes down later in the episode. One of the weird bits, though, is that when Shaw first spots Pennywise again, he kind of recognizes him from the 1908 cycle, Bob Gray's performance when he was a child. Like, he's seeing Bob Gray, like, oh, I remember that from when I was a little kid. But he doesn't put two and two together with the face of the scary man that attacked him in the woods. That felt like the weird part. Like, wouldn't you also remember that from the woods as well, too, if you're remembering Pennywise Bob Gray? Really loved all the scenes inside Pennywise's mind, inside Bob Gray's cart, like this whole mind space area, just super trippy. I do not think that we've ever actually been inside Pennywise's perspective in any production of it, any movie, or any other adaptation before ever. We're basically experiencing this from Pennywise's perspective. Loved how pissed off he got too, like, wait a minute, I'm not Bob Gray, why are you calling me Bob? Basically, what's happening here is Hallorann is using his shining ability to see Bob Gray's memories and using those against Pennywise from the 1908 cycle. So that's how Hallorann is able to do all this stuff. When he calls himself a god, an eater of worlds, that is true. That's also a line from the book as well. He's also done this to entire worlds before he came to Earth. Also, the Muschiettis confirm that Pennywise was sent to Earth as a punishment, but they did not say who punished him and sent him or banished him from the todash darkness dimension. My early assumption is that the only being who would be powerful enough to do this to Pennywise to punish him and also would want him inside Earth's dimension, because that's bad, like you don't want him inside Earth's dimension, would actually be the Crimson King. He rules over the todash darkness dimension where Pennywise comes from. I think it was Mike Flanagan that was working on a new Dark Tower HBO series. Maybe that series would get into Crimson King stuff, like real big high-level cosmic Stephen King stuff. Or maybe we could get even more of that backstory for Pennywise in future seasons where we actually see the event of him being trapped in the meteorite and sent across dimensions. You just like see the Crimson King punt him across dimensions.
Ew. This is the worst place yet.
Will then becomes the Frodo of the group, having to take the ring to Mount Doom the rest of the way, but they also make more nods to the eventual future Losers Club having to do it as a group, like they have to perform the Ritual of Chud as a group, just like the group here in the 1960s had to put the dagger in the tree together. We finally get our Pennywise versus Shaw reunion. Like I said earlier, basically plays out the way we expected it, with him eventually remembering him like I never forget a smell. You're that kid from the 1908. Later when you see him skipping slowly towards the tree, like it seems like it's almost happening in slow motion, it's mostly to mess with them, and it's the limit of the barrier. Like the minute he travels past the limit of the barrier, he can go anywhere that he wants. We see the adults working together to stop the military while the little kids work together to finish off Pennywise with the dagger. He literally calls them losers, a very direct Easter egg nod to the 1980s losers in the It movies. You also notice when Hanlon shoots him, blows off a few chunks, it does not slow him down one bit. You can destroy his physical body, but unless you actually destroy the deadlights themselves, his pure energy, original form, he will be just fine eventually. Like he'll just go back to ground and eventually regenerate himself. Just as they're about to do the deed, Hallorann sees the ancient Native American spirit. Rose hears but does not see it, and he sees Rich's spirit return to give Pennywise the bird. That was actually a great moment. Loved Rich giving him the bird as he helped the rest of the losers put the dagger in. Then another real big deep-cut lore Easter egg for Pennywise in the books. He changes to his winged form at the end. This is actually based on the first form that he took when he first crashed to Earth millions of years ago. He became a bird-like creature before he became anything else. There's a very big visible effect connecting all the pillars around town when they place the dagger. I'm assuming that everybody was able to actually see this. Then I think the idea here is that he cycles backwards through the forms that he took this season to set up the idea of him traveling backwards in time in future seasons. So he goes to Pickle Dad and then to the demon baby that he was at the beginning of the season. Finally back to the clown form until he goes to his original Deadlights form and then zips off back to the cistern. So if it wasn't clear, this energy form, these three lights here, this is what his actual true form looks like. They make it seem like there's a short time jump, like maybe just a couple days, like very few days. They have a funeral for Rich. Marge's speech is very Losers Club coded, also foreshadowing the It movies later in the timeline. Hallorann also sees Rich's spirit with his parents. We see Rich's parents for the first time on the series. When he sits down and tries to ease their burden by telling them about Rich always being with them, this is also meant to show you that he's gotten a handle on his Shining ability too, and will eventually try to help Danny during the events of the Shining movie. Marge then sees Rich's plane in a tree in town. Lily visits her father's grave. They all hang out at their clubhouse again and start talking more about Pennywise lore and setting up future seasons. So there's a lot of teasers here that drop like a lot of exposition about what's happening next season. First, Marge tells everyone what Pennywise told her about her future son Richie connecting to the bloodlines in the future 1980s Losers Club, like which kids are connected to which kids across the timeline. Then she sets up season 2 when she starts to wonder if he can travel back into the past, into his past body because he exists outside of space and time, change events in the 1930s cycle during the Bradley Gang massacre to prevent some of these kids from being born in the 1960s, all to avoid the events of season 1. Explaining why they're doing season 2 going in reverse, and then season 3 will be the 1908 cycle. He'll just do that again, jump back into the past even further to 1908.
Running backwards as a series of jumps.
So remember, the idea now is that Pennywise enters season 2 during the 1930 cycle, knowing everything that just happened during season 1 with these losers in the 1960s. So I think this is also them opening the door so that the show can change things and add a bunch of lore that wasn't originally in the books, that Stephen King didn't originally write. Like, oh, it's different now because Pennywise came back into the past and is trying to change the past. Then they set up Hanlon and Hallorann for the events of the Shining movie as well as the It movies, explaining how they left the military. Honorable discharge, basically. Hallorann says that he's got a friend with a hotel who needs a chef, and a joke about the hotel not being any trouble. It will be plenty of trouble. That is basically the events of the Shining movie, and Dr. Sleep eventually too after that. When he asks Hanlon to keep him up to date about his family like Will and Charlotte and says don't tell anyone about it, I think that's to avoid messing with the events of the It movies and trampling on future canon because we never actually see Hallorann get involved during the It movies. I think this is meant to imply that he was helping them out during the events of the It movies, but that's why we didn't see it. Like, we can't trample on canon, but we want to show that Hallorann is still helping out in the future when Pennywise comes back. The Grogans leave town to go to Canada and set up the idea that Will and Ronnie will eventually get together later on. That's also why she had the 2 lollipops at the end of the episode too, as they're driving away, like for her and Will. They will become the parents of Mike eventually. Hanlon then also explains a big loophole too, big plot hole, why the rest of the military and Congress, nobody else in the United States, ever find out about what happened in Derry during season 1. Shaw's unit had never told anyone else inside the larger U.S. military or Congress what they were really doing in Derry with Pennywise, so Hanlon gets the honorable discharge and gets to keep his pension, more importantly, if he never speaks a word of what happened. This is also the show's way of not stepping on the events of the movies and explaining how he winds up raising the sheep and doing the slaughterhouse. All because Rose decides that she doesn't want to run the farm anymore and sells it to them, and he's going to raise sheep on this farm. Speaking of Rose too, she's also one of the characters that we'll probably see come back in season 2, but it'll be a younger version of Rose and a younger version of Kersh. Like, there are a number of people who are middle-aged or a little bit older during the events of season 1 that we can just see younger versions of during season 2 in the 1930s. So expect young Rose to come back and a younger version of Kersh to also come back. Rose then references the future It movie, saying that this isn't the end of the story, others will come, and basically tells Hanlon and his wife to watch over all the kids. Make sure everything is safe here because in 27 years, Pennywise is going to come back. This also sets up the Stephen King cameo during It Chapter 2. He winds up running her shop. It explains why she isn't in the shop anymore. Like, she eventually leaves town, and basically Stephen King winds up buying it, or whoever he's playing during the events of the movie. When Will tells Ronnie, once you leave Derry, you forget, that's the exact same thing that young Rose told to young Shaw before he left town. Then as they drive out of town and they transition to that title before the credits, it says Chapter 1, implying that they've already renewed the show for Season 2, or Chapter 2, set during the 1930s. And in the mid-credit scene, we see what happened to Ingrid Kersh after she got deadlit. She was sent to Juniper Hill. The wolves that she mentions is a reference to what the circus troupe told her when they found her father, Bob Gray Bloody Handkerchief. They thought that wolves killed him. Then the music that the orderlies play that quiets her down is the same music that she was playing earlier in the season and that plays later when older Beverly visits older Kersh in It Chapter 2. Then there's a flash forward to the 1980 cycle right before the events of the first It movie. If it wasn't clear, because of the timing of Beverly's mother's death, it's meant to happen right before the events of the first It movie. We see the older version of Mrs. Kersh painting a picture of herself as Periwinkle. This is meant to be her periwinkle outfit. And we see Beverly's mother hang herself, which they had referenced during the events of the It movies. We never actually saw her mother, though, during those movies, giving us the young Beverly cameo scene. It's the same actress that played young Beverly during the first It movie. This is also to explain how the older Beverly knew Kersh so well because she met her when she visited her mother at Juniper Hill, who also replies with the same line that she just told Lily in the earlier episode, "In Derry, no one who dies here ever really dies," as she makes the distorted Pennywise-style grin, and boom, they go back to credits. And we'll see you during Season 2. You also remember that young Kersh coming back for Season 2, she works as an orderly inside Juniper Hill. We're probably going to spend most of Season 2 with Pennywise taking people, or like capturing people and eating them from Juniper Hill. Basically the Juniper Hill season of Welcome to Derry. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if there's any other Easter eggs or references that you spotted that I didn't talk about in this video or my previous episode videos, just write them below in the comments. I'll add them to my future bonus videos. What'll probably happen in the next couple of days is that HBO and the Muschiettis will start talking more about future seasons. Hopefully we'll get some kind of teaser, but it'll probably be a couple years before Season 2 actually comes out, so it'll be a good long while. Probably the other biggest thing that he was talking about recently was that supercut that he was planning on doing for It. He said that he spent so much time working on the Welcome to Derry series, he didn't have time to work on the supercut, but he's basically doing the same thing that Quentin Tarantino did with the Kill Bill movies, combining them into a single super movie. Supposedly he's also incorporating a lot of unseen footage from It Chapter 2 and the first movie into those as well too, just to help sew them both together into a single super movie. I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get that out before Season 2 drops. But there's a bunch of big stuff coming up. The next big series I'll be doing episode videos for will be Fallout Season 2. That literally starts this week, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Everybody click here for all my Welcome to Derry episodes, and click here for my Fallout Season 2 episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.